Boise State Public Radio. This is The Connector. It's Idaho's daily news. Good morning. I'm George Prentice. This morning we'll tell you about two Boise State volleyball players, part of a lawsuit against San Jose State, a university whose volleyball team, Boise State, said they wouldn't play. Got the latest on the trial of a number of Idaho women challenging Idaho's anti-abortion laws. And in the wake of two police shootings in less than a week, I sit down with Boise Police Chief Chris Dennison. It is Friday, the 15th of November, and here are today's stories. Two Boise State volleyball players are among a dozen current or former players and an assistant coach from Mountain West Schools suing the conference and San Jose State University for allowing a transgender athlete to play for the Spartans. Troy Oppie reports.
The lawsuit alleges the Mountain West Conference, SJSU, and its administrators broke conference rules, squashed free speech rights, and unfairly punished players who took, quote, a public stand for their right to compete in a separate sports category, unquote. Each of the players suing is from a team which refused to play San Jose State volleyball this year after it became public that one of the Spartan players is transgender. This is the third season for that player on the team. The governing body of college sports, the NCAA, updated its competition requirements for transgender athletes in 2022, limiting eligibility based on measured testosterone levels. Mountain West Commissioner Gloria Nevarez, a named defendant in the lawsuit, has previously said the player met all eligibility requirements to compete. The lawsuit, along with a separate federal lawsuit against the NCAA by one of the plaintiffs, could have broad implications for all of college sports, alleging the NCAA policy for transgender athletes violates Title IX protections against sex-based discrimination. Plaintiffs say San Jose State's player is male and thus ineligible to compete in the Mountain West Conference tournament, which starts November 27th. They've asked for an injunction and restoration of the forfeit losses on team records. The lawsuit was first reported by the Idaho Statesman. Troy Oppie, Boise State Public Radio News.
At the Ada County Courthouse, it was day 3 yesterday in a case brought by 4 women who say they were denied emergency health care because of Idaho's anti-abortion laws. As Rachel Cohen reports, arguments in the case are all about exceptions, or lack thereof.
Idaho's laws don't include medical exceptions to preserve a woman's health. This lawsuit filed by the Center for Reproductive Rights seeks to change that. Dr. Ali Raja is deputy chair of emergency medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital. He was called as an expert witness Thursday and says Idaho's laws are confusing to doctors.
It's just impossible for us to know if treating or not treating will lead to death or simply worsening of illness, loss of fertility, or a number of other complications.
The state of Idaho argues its abortion bans are clear, but plaintiffs say doctors facing uncertainty and potential prosecution are directing patients out of state. Women in this case sought treatment in Oregon and Washington. The trial picks up next week. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Rachel Cohen.
And now we will bring you a portion of our exclusive conversation with Boise Police Chief Chris Dennison. It has been quite a week. On Sunday, Boise police shot an armed suspect. That suspect died a short time later. On Wednesday, another standoff following a traffic stop. In that instance, a passenger in a vehicle got out of the car, wielded a knife, took off on foot. A short time later, in a confrontation, he was shot by an officer. I spoke with Chief Dennison about the shootings. Here's our conversation.
Good morning.
I have to ask you about the fact that we have had 2 officer-involved shooting incidents in less than a week in the city. But can you appreciate someone in the community when they think, oh my gosh, this is way too many, and I might even feel a little less safe?
Yeah, I think, look, any time there's an officer-involved shooting, it adds a strain not only to the community but to the police department itself. Having myself been involved in an officer-involved shooting, I've had an incident command where officers have been involved in shootings and killed people. it's an extreme stress. So it's not just the community that's feeling it, it's the members of the BPD, which are also members of the community. We send men and women to situations they're rapidly evolving. We only have limited control we have control of what we're doing. A lot of times we're having to respond to what other people are doing, and trying to do so in a way that is as safe as possible for our officers, for the community, and for the person we're dealing with. So you're right. We look at every officer-involved shooting. We look at them specifically. We look at what are our policies, what are our training, what are the tactics, and are there things that we could do differently in the future that could mitigate the use of deadly force. It's the last thing any of us want to do.
But when they come so close to one another, can you appreciate the fact that it shakes us a little bit too much?
Oh, absolutely. It's always concerning, especially when you have an officer-involved shooting that comes. Officer-involved shootings that come in such close proximity.
Yeah, and both of them involved knives.
Correct.
Is that a trend? Is that something that we're seeing more of?
Yeah, I don't know if I could speak to the trends with knives. I wouldn't have enough information to give you that. Yeah. But again, anytime we have any incident, we're always looking at, okay, what could we do? What could we do differently in the future to try to avoid these? And again, appreciating the fact that we put men and women in dangerous situations.
When you say what we can do differently, does that mean a tweaking of training? Obviously, there's a debrief. You deconstruct an incident. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Is we look at what are we training? And we look at best practices across the country. We can look at best practices in other parts of the world and what tools that we could potentially equip our officers with to mitigate these situations that we may not currently have. So these are things we have to look at, and we constantly want to be at the cutting edge, because again, the goal of every incident that we go to is not to take a life. It is to save lives. It's to take people into custody that need to be taken into custody, to put them before a judge, potentially in front of a jury.
Right.
To make
but there's
those
always
decisions.
that moment, and you know that moment.
Yes.
Right. And help me out with that. Is that training? I mean, in that moment, shouldn't that be based on what you have been trained to do?
Well, if you're talking about the officer's response at the time where it goes from
when they fire their weapon.
When they fire their weapon, there is training, and sometimes that is the absolute only decision the officers have to make is to protect themselves and protect others. It is to pull the trigger. It is, again, it's not something we want to do. It's something we are trained to do, but we are also trained to mitigate situations and de-escalate, and we continue to evolve that training. We continue to push the bounds on what we can do to save lives.
And for someone who says, I feel a little less safe, you would say what?
I would say that you have a police department in Boise that is continually evaluating what we're doing, is pushing the bounds on training and what tools we can equip our officers with, and that these incidents are, even though they occurred in close proximity, the driver of these incidents wasn't necessarily the police officers themselves, but the suspects engaging in behavior. That it's the suspects failing to comply with commands or making action, engaging in behavior that was dangerous to the officers or surrounding community members that led to this action.
We sat down with Chief Dennison at Boise Police Headquarters. And that is today's episode of The Connector. I'm George Prentice. We'll see you back here on Monday to stay in touch with the news. Between now and then, check out BoiseStatePublicRadio.org or download the free Boise State Public Radio app. In fact, that's where you can find my entire conversation with the police chief. And thanks for listening.
Family, work, school, you've got a lot going on. I'm Aisha Roscoe from NPR. We know you're busy, so we've made staying informed easy. The Boise State Public Radio mobile app is a hassle-free way to keep up with the latest news and stories. Whether you're cooking dinner, folding laundry, or just tackling your daily to-do list, staying in the know has never been so simple. Download the free Boise State Public Radio app today, so even when you're busy, you'll never miss a beat. And join me for Weekend Edition every Sunday morning from 6 to 10 on Boise State Public Radio News.